ba?
Eileen? Hindi natin nalagyan!
At the beginning of the movie, Ranulfo brings his ill sister Loretta to a shaman named Almira. Almira recites some prayers over her and gives her something to drink. After a while, a blue liquid starts coming out of Loretta's mouth, and after some time of suffering, she dies. Seeing this, Ranulfo becomes very sad and says that he brought his sister here to save her, but now she is dead. Almira then gets up, extinguishes the candles, and covers the idols of her gods with a cloth. She tells Ranulfo there might be another way, and begins performing a ritual on Loretta, causing the room's light to flicker, and the cloth covering the idols starts moving. After a while, Loretta's body suddenly shows movement, and she starts levitating in the air, which frightens both Ranulfo and Almira. Loretta then returns to bed. A symbol begins forming on her stomach, and she suddenly wakes up. We then see Eileen and her husband Clark at a church, attending the baptism ceremony of their friends, Janet and Bob's son, Anton. Bob asks them if they are planning to have a child, but they do not respond. The next day, Eileen is with her father Louis in the hospital, and she tells him that as soon as he wakes up, she promises to have Luz cook his favorite callus. Louis responds by moving his fingers, and Eileen is overjoyed to see that he has awakened. However, when he looks at her, he tells her that he doesn't need her, and suddenly his condition worsens. Eileen panics and presses the bell to call the nurse, but then she realizes that her father is dead. Later, she confides in Clark and says she knew this was bound to happen, but she has many questions that will never be answered. Clark tells her that her dad was not in his right mind, and that whatever he said, he didn't mean it, so she shouldn't take it to heart. She says that when her mom died, her dad took care of her, but she failed to take care of him. Clark explains that comes with being a parent, and it's not an obligation, to which she asks what she would know about being a parent, since she couldn't even give him a grandchild. A few days later, Eileen attends the birthday party of her friend Rana's daughter, Julia. Amid the celebration, Julia begins to scream that she doesn't want animals and magicians, but mermaids. Her mother tries to calm her down and feels very embarrassed in front of the guests. She then goes to Eileen and says that Eileen is very lucky because she doesn't have headaches like this. She says Eileen's time and money are all hers, leading a life of peace. She then asks if has she considered IVF or adoption, to which Eileen says they considered everything, but Clark just has too many issues. Janet says she gets it and it's probably his guilt. Rana suggests her to manifest a child, but both of them should really want it. While they are talking, we see a man outside watching Eileen. In a flashback, we see Clark on duty when a man tells him that he heard howling from one of the containers. Clark asks him to open the container, and as he does, they find the container pitch dark. Clark asks the man to give him light, and as they all move forward inside the container, they hear growling and get shocked to see a terrifying creature inside a cage that suddenly screams. Clark wakes up in his room and finds that Eileen is not in bed. He finds her on the balcony and asks if she is okay. Eileen says it might work with Dr. Lester this time, to which he responds that they have already seen so many doctors, and all of them have been very expensive. She tells him that her dad left some money, and that Rona said if they both wanted enough, it will be given to them. Clark then asks, "Aren't just the two of us happy?" That night, Eileen wakes up hearing the doorbell, and she tells Clark that she thinks someone is at the door. Clark goes to check and finds a little girl standing there. Confused, he asks her who she is and if she is with someone, but just then, Eileen arrives and the girl hands her a note with the name Jade written on it. Eileen brings the girl inside and asks Clark to get a towel. Later, Clark finds some photos in her bag and asks Jade how she got past the gate, to which she replies she was looking for him. Clark asks if she knows him, and Jade responds with Colonel Clark Martinez. Clark tells her he is no longer a cop and asks if she is in trouble, to which Jade says her mommy told her to look for him. Clark asks where her mom is, and Jade replies that she can't come back. And when Eileen asks about her dad, Jade says that Clark is her dad. Clark says that what Jade is saying seems impossible, and Eileen admits she's not sure. She then asks how Jade knows him, to which Clark explains that she only knows his rank, which can be found online, and when she asks how Jade knows their address, Clark says he is just as confused as she is. The next day, they take Jade to the police station, where Colonel Jake shows her a photo, and she identifies the woman as her mom, and in the next photo, she says the woman is Almara. Jade then says she is hungry, and Eileen asks Jake if there is a canteen or a food vendor at the station. After Eileen and Jade leave, Jake asks Clark whose child Jade is, and Clark replies that he has no idea. While Eileen is buying food for Jade, she notices that Jade is no longer with her, and meanwhile, Clark tells Jake that there's no way the child is his, because he can't even get Eileen pregnant. He suspects that the child might just be after his money. Jake responds that if the mother were trying to extort him, she wouldn't have waited this long. He suggests that Clark take a DNA test to get the situation resolved. Meanwhile, Jade enters the prison area of the station and finds a man there as he approaches her. Jade tells him that Joe Pat will shoot him on March 22, and the man looks scared upon hearing this. Just then, Eileen arrives looking for her, and Jade turns to her and calls her mommy. Eileen tells Clark that in the meantime, Jade will stay with them because she's not from Manila, and it will take a while to track down the people in the photos. Jake mentions that he knows someone from Child Services, to which Eileen says he knows their address. And if Clark is indeed Jade's father, then Jade is not an orphan. Eileen adds that their house is like a fortress due to Clark's business, so Jade will be very safe there. As they enter their car to return home, Clark notices a man watching them from a distance. That evening, Clark hears some whispering coming from Jade's room, but when he goes to check on her, he finds that she is sleeping. However, as he leaves, Jade starts chanting something in her sleep. Simultaneously, we see an entity chanting the same words in a different location, where the dead body of Loretta is lying in front of it. The next day, Clark is reviewing some photos and notices a girl in the background, revealing that he had a romantic encounter with her. His attention then shifts outside the window, where he sees a woman standing on the building opposite, staring at him. Just then, his phone rings and Manuel informs him that he is calling from Child Services. And when Clark looks back, he is shocked to find that the woman has disappeared. Meanwhile, Eileen asks Jade why she was looking for Clark, to which she responds that her mommy said the colonel could help find a new home for her. That night, while Eileen and Clark are sleeping, Jade comes over to Eileen and starts chanting something, and Eileen begins mumbling the same thing in her sleep. Clark suddenly wakes up and is terrified to see an entity over Eileen, but when he grabs his gun and points it at the entity, he realizes it's just Jade, and Eileen says she's just a child. The next morning, Jade tells Clark that her mommy used to talk about him a lot. He asks how her mommy could talk about him if she doesn't know him, to which Jade replies that her mommy said he is good at keeping secrets, and then asks if her mommy is his secret. Clark insists he doesn't know her or her mother, and that she shouldn't even be here. Jade retorts that her mommy also said he is a liar. Frustrated, Clark says he doesn't know what she wants, but if it's money, what she's doing isn't right. He informs her that Child Services will help her, and that someone is coming tomorrow. He tells her that he knows this is hard to accept, but whatever she is looking for isn't here. She asks if he doesn't want to have a family. During this, Clark gets a text from Jake saying that he has the DNA results, and Jade then says he is the only one missing. Later, Rona tells Eileen that if this happened to her and Dan, it would be an instant split. Eileen responds that the police are still investigating and asks if she can throw out a kid who has nowhere to go. Meanwhile, Julia notices Jade standing outside the railing, and Jade looks at her and then jumps down. Julia runs to her mother and tells her that Jade is dead. Alarmed, they rush to check on her, but find Jade playing down there, unharmed. After this, we see Jade bringing a dead bird back to life, and Julia asks if she knows magic. Jade then brings the bird to Julia, and, without saying anything, kills it in front of her. In a flashback, we see the entity emerging from a cage, prompting Clark and his team to try to shoot it, but the entity moves swiftly, evading their bullets. It jumps around, killing all of Clark's companions, and just as it is about to attack Clark, Jake shoots it and saves him. Jake tells Clark that he is not sterile, to which Clark responds that it's impossible, because all the doctors they consulted said he was sterile. So how Jade could be his daughter? Jake asks, where he hooked up with Loretta, and Clark reveals it was in Marinduque, 2016, where she was a waitress for his first client. Jake asks if he and Eileen got married in 2016, to which Clark says 2015. Jake suggests that Clark might have become sterile after impregnating her, and jokes that maybe she cursed him for being an asshole. He then asks how Eileen is with the kid, and Clark admits that sometimes she acts like Jade is her own child. Jake says if Eileen falls in love with Jade, Clark could gain an instant daughter and suggests that he tell Eileen the truth, as she might forgive him. Clark then notices a man watching him and goes out angrily to confront him. He starts beating the man on the road, but the man keeps laughing. Jake intervenes and tries to stop Clark, but Clark pushes him away and continues beating the man. Soon after, the police arrive, and Clark becomes terrified when he sees the man's face. And in the chaos, the man manages to run away. Clark is arrested and put in jail, and Jake explains that he is not a cop anymore and shouldn't act like an action star. He asks who the guy was that he beat up, to which Clark explains that they've been stalking him for days. First a kid, then a young girl, and now this man. He says they all look the same, and they seem like part of some kind of cult. Jake says he is just paranoid and asks since when, to which Clark replies since Jade appeared. Later, the man in prison approaches Clark and asks if the little girl visited him and warns him not to let her come here. He says, "She has the tongue of an angel, but the hands of the devil." Clark asks what he is talking about and how he knows Jade, to which the man tells him that the girl is possessed. Meanwhile, Eileen sees Jade jumping on the bed, trying to reach the ceiling. At first, she thinks Jade is just playing, but to her shock, Jade touches the ceiling and begins to levitate in the air. However, it turns out to be just a nightmare. She then comes downstairs, hearing someone laughing, and her shock intensifies when she sees her dad playing with Jade. Confused, Eileen approaches them, and her dad asks if she decided to have a kid right after he died. Suddenly, her friends and family appear and tell her that Jade is not hers. Terrified, Eileen notices blood on her tummy, and as she screams, a fetus is shown that turns demonic, and she wakes up from her sleep again. Later, Eileen discovers that Jade is Clark's daughter, and Clark tries to explain that it was just one night, and that he was very drunk. Eileen points out that he blamed her when he learned he was sterile. Clark insists that this has nothing to do with that, but Eileen says she wishes it did because it would have been easier to accept. She asks if there are any more secrets he's hiding, and he replies no, apologizing to her. Later, feeling guilty, Clark tries to talk to Eileen, reminding her that he has already apologized, to which she says she said okay. Clark says he will fix this, and Eileen responds that this is what he is good at. As Clark begins to leave, Jade looks at him with anger. Eileen gets up and asks if he can fix this, and Clark gets terrified when she turns her head and it falls down. But the next moment, she calmly asks him to be careful. Meanwhile, Manuel from Child Services arrives, but he is attacked and killed by a living dead. On the other hand, Jake searches police records and discovers that Loretta was one of the passengers who went missing after a bus accident. He calls Clark to inform him that Loretta was last seen in Plaridel, Bulacan. However, the bus fell into a valley, and all the passengers died. Loretta and Jade were on that bus, but their bodies, along with Loretta's brother, were never found. Jake says he has the address of the crash site and suggests they go there. As they talk, Clark hears the door of his room opening, but doesn't see anyone there. Unbeknownst to him, Jade is on the ceiling right above him. Clark spots the man and that lady on the CCTV camera and angrily rushes out to confront them. Meanwhile, as Jake leaves, Jopet enters the station, revealing that it is March 22. He approaches the man in the prison and shoots him before he can say anything. On the other hand, Jade watches Clark searching for the man and the lady with a creepy smile on her face. In a flashback, we see Loretta, her brother, and Jade on the bus, when suddenly it is hit by a truck. causing it to fall into a valley. The scene shifts to show that Jade survived the accident, but Loretta and her brother are dead, and Loretta's body is gruesomely cut into pieces. Jade approaches Loretta's brother, rubs him, and whispers something in his ear, which brings him back to life. She then does the same with the other passengers, and they all come back to life. Clark returns to his house and finds Eileen in her room, breastfeeding Jade, and she gestures for him to be quiet. After putting Jade to sleep on the bed, Eileen steps out, and Clark tells her they need to leave immediately. Eileen reveals she is lactating and shows it to him, and Clark gets shocked, but he insists they talk about this later and that they are not safe. Eileen then tells him she is pregnant, to which Clark responds that it's impossible, but she mentions Loretta, saying that nothing is impossible now. At that moment, Jade comes there and Clark points a gun at her, declaring that she is possessed, but Eileen hugs Jade and Clark pleads with her to come with him. As he tries to explain, the door behind him opens, and as he looks back, a living dead attacks Clark, knocking him down. It turns out to be Loretta's brother Ranulfo, who attempts to strangle Clark while another living dead takes Eileen away. Clark struggles against Ranulfo, but then another living dead appears and knocks him unconscious. After a while, Jake arrives at Clark's house and, sensing something is wrong, immediately calls for backup. Next, we see Loretta's mutilated body still eerily breathing, and Clark wakes up tied to a tree. He sees Jade and the others preparing for a ritual around Eileen, and only then Jake arrives at the scene and quickly frees him. Jake is also shocked by the horrific scene, and as he turns, his head explodes, and Clark is horrified, barely able to comprehend what just happened. Clark moves toward Jade in an attempt to save Eileen, but the living dead begin to move towards him. However, Jade explodes their heads just by moving his hands, because Clark is her dad. He then confronts Jade, asking why she is doing this and what she has done with Eileen, to which Jade replies that Mommy can come back now and they will finally be together. Clark says, "Let's end this," and shoots Loretta's body. And as Jade cries for her mother, Clark rushes to Eileen and tries to take her away. However, Eileen's body suddenly starts shaking violently, forcing Clark to put her down. He tries to revive her, but she passes out again, and Ranulfo shoots Clark. Clark finds Jade in front of him and tries to reach her, and Jade extends her hand towards him, but to his horror, he sees an entity instead of her, and he dies in agony right there. Eileen wakes up suddenly, and Jade approaches her, calling her mom. Eileen gets up and starts following her, and as she walks, her tummy begins to hurt, and she sees an incomplete symbol formed on it. She then approaches Jade, who takes out Jake's car keys and gives them to her. As they walk, Jade says she is whole again, and when Eileen asks her where Clark is, Jade replies, "Daddy didn't want to come." As they get in the car, we see Loretta's body still breathing, meaning the ritual is unfinished. Eileen decides to start a new life with Jade and drives towards the house, and the movie ends here.